Hi, good morning. Welcome to this webinar series hosted by the Reclaiming Appalachia Coalition. For those of you who are unfamiliar with this coalition, RAC is a regional collaboration that supports mine reclamation projects throughout Central Appalachia. And in particular, we seek to support projects that are responsive to community needs and interests and that accelerate the growth of new sustainable sectors. So the coalition consists of lead organizations in 4 states. My name is Rebecca, and I work with Appalachian Citizens Law Center in Kentucky. And our coalition's other lead organizations include Appalachian Voices in Virginia, Coalfield Development Corporation in West Virginia, Rural Action in Ohio, and a regional technical expert named Downstream Strategies that is based in West Virginia. So this coalition came together after grant initiatives such as the Abandoned Mineland Pilot Program were implemented to support both mine land reclamation as well as community economic development. The goal of this coalition is to provide technical and planning assistance to those in communities that are interested in applying for AML pilot grants, as well as to elevate through various kinds of media these innovative and exciting projects and project ideas that are taking place throughout the region. So thank you again for joining the webinar this morning on reauthorization of abandoned mine land fees, a program that is very important for abandoned mine land reclamation and thus for future use of these lands and their impact on our communities. So I'm really excited today to have such an excellent group of expert panelists that will provide unique perspectives on the AML program and the fee on coal production that was stated under the Surface Mining and Control Act to fund reclamation of mine lands abandoned prior to 1977. In large part, the policy discussion we will be having today is regarding the achievements of the program in the past, as well as the reauthorization of this fee as it is currently set to expire in 2021. So first, we will have Eric Cavazza who will speak. Eric is the director of Pennsylvania's Bureau of Abandoned Mine Reclamation within the Department of Environmental Protection. The Bureau administers both the acid mine drainage and abandoned mine land reclamation programs. He has over 35 years of service with the Commonwealth and has held many roles within the Bureau, including the last 8 years serving as director. He will give a presentation that will provide an overview of the AML program and fee, what the program, and as well as what the program has meant for Pennsylvania in terms of reclamation accomplishments. Next, we'll have Autumn Coleman, who is the Bureau Chief with the Montana Department of Natural Resources and Conservation. In this role, she works with the staff of the Resource Development Bureau to provide grants and loans to communities and private citizens to reclaim, conserve, and develop Montana's natural resources. She has almost 20 years of experience in natural resource management, primarily in mine reclamation, and she's also served in leadership from 2016 to 2019 in the National Association of Abandoned Mine Land Programs. During that time, she provided the leadership that unified the association to support AML reauthorization efforts. Today, she'll give a presentation on what remains to be done in terms of reclamation and also examples of the importance of the program for certified states in the Western U.S. Third, Travis Parsons will be speaking. Travis joined the West Virginia Abandoned Mine Land Programs in 2010 and has been the planning administrator there since 2013. He's also the West Virginia delegate and current president for the National Association of Abandoned Mine Land Programs. He will discuss the current AML reauthorization bill that was introduced in the House and how it addresses the primary concerns of the states and tribes. He'll also give examples of how the AML program has allowed West Virginia to address critical water quality AML problems. Fourth, Erin Savage will be presenting. She's a senior program manager at Appalachian Voices and that focuses on coal mining impacts around Central Appalachia. She has worked with communities on local impacts for both active mining and AML sites, and she also works on grassroots engagement in federal law and policy. And she will discuss the importance of AML reauthorization for Central Appalachia. Last, we have Greg Conrad. He is the former executive director of the Interstate Mining Compact Commission, or IMCC, which is a multi-state governmental organization that represents 26 mineral producing states. Greg served in this position since 1988 and was responsible for overseeing several important legislative and regulatory issues for these states, such as mining and reclamation, mine placement of coal combustion products, financial assurance, identification and restoration of abandoned mine lands, mine safety and health, and other environmental issues associated with mineral production, such as surface and groundwater quality and quantity. Today, he will present on the possible legislative strategy needed to secure passage of legislation that reauthorizes the AML fee and its connection with other related bills before Congress. So the webinar format today, each panelist will have about 7 to 8 minutes to present, and then once all the panelists have finished presenting, we'll open it up for questions. You can see the question box should be in the right-hand corner of your screen where you can type in questions to ask to our panelists. If you want to direct your question towards a particular panelist, please identify that in your question and specify that there. And then without any further ado, I think we will go ahead and get started now with the presentation by Eric Cavazza. Thanks again for being here.
All right, thanks, Rebecca. I'm going to talk a little bit about the AML program in general and then talk about accomplishments and work to be done yet in Pennsylvania. I have a lot of text on these slides. I'm going to, for the most part, follow them along. And you can read along with me if you want. And I have some graphics and photos to kind of highlight some of this stuff. So my program, the Bureau of Abandoned Mine Reclamation within the Pennsylvania DEP, does administer the Abandoned Mine Land Program here in Pennsylvania. And we are responsible for resolving AML hazards and other problems from past coal mining in accordance with requirements established by the Federal Office of Surface Mining, our federal oversight agency, and also in accordance with Title IV of the Surface Mine Control and Reclamation Act.
Hey, Eric, I'm gonna interrupt you real quick. We can't currently see your slides. Are you wanting to share your screen yet?
Well,
there we go. Now you're all good.
okay. Sorry, technology glitch here. The Surface Mine Control and Reclamation Act, or SMACRA, defines lands and waters that are eligible for reclamation. And generally, this is not in all cases, but for the most part, it's lands and waters which were mined for coal prior to August 3rd, 1977, and abandoned or left in an inadequate reclamation status, and for which there's no continuing reclamation reclamation responsibility under state or federal law. Now I lost control of my own screen. I can't advance the slides.
Pull. I think you're looking at the camera view of your own. So you should be able to pull yourself over to the actual PowerPoint. There we go.
Somebody changed it for me, I think. All right, AML grants and the reclamation fee. We get AML grant funding to Pennsylvania. It's provided through grants from the Federal Office of Surface Mining. The primary source of funding for those grants comes from a reclamation fee paid by the active mining industry on each ton of coal mined. The OSM collects those fees and distributes them back to states and tribes that have approved abandoned mine land programs according to a distribution formula established in the law. And as we're talking about today, collection of the reclamation fee that's currently authorized by SMACRA is set to expire in September of 2021. The reclamation fee over time has changed. When the law was originally passed in 1977, you can see the left big green dot. The price or the fee for surface mine coal was 35 cents and 15 cents for underground mining. When the fee was reauthorized in 2006, it included two 10% reductions, one that went into effect in 2008 through 2012, and one that went into effect in 2013 to current times, which dropped the fee to 28 cents for surface mine and 12 for underground mining. Some key issues for Pennsylvania. We have inventoried right now over 287,000 acres of land in need of reclamation, and our estimated construction cost to complete that work exceeds $5 billion. Pennsylvania has a long history of coal mining, and about 10% of the land area of our state is underlain by abandoned underground coal mining operations. A lot of those mining operations produce acid mine drainage, and as a result, we have over 5,500 miles of streams which are impaired by drainage from those abandoned mines. And abandoned mines are located in 43 of Pennsylvania's 67 counties. This is kind of the problem areas that show where those 287,000 acres of unreclaimed AML are. The maroon color on this map shows the area of the states that are underlain by abandoned underground mines, areas that are mined out and probably will experience mine subsidence at some point. And this map shows the streams in Pennsylvania which are impaired by acid mine drainage, and as I mentioned, it's over 5,500 miles of streams. And you know, a lot of our AMD has iron in it, so we have a lot of streams that are orange, and probably most of you that live in a mining area have seen something similar in your area. So what has Pennsylvania accomplished? We've reclaimed over 91,000 acres of high priority abandoned coal mine sites. We've stabilized thousands of homes and businesses from the threat of mine subsidence, and reclaimed nearly 1.5 million linear feet of dangerous high wall, which roughly equates to a drive from Pittsburgh to Philadelphia, or from one side of our state to the other. Some examples real quick, photos that kind of graphically show what kind of problems we deal with. This is a number of mine subsidence problems. That's a dramatic impact on people, their lives, their homes. Also, high walls. These are typical sites that are left every year in Pennsylvania. There's usually a couple accidents and maybe a loss of life at one of these sites each year. So they're ongoing problems that need to be addressed to make our area safer. We've extinguished 46 underground mine fires or coal refuse fires, and we've eliminated the hazard with nearly 1,900 open mine shafts and portals. And we do have a fair number of mine fires and refuse fires in Pennsylvania. We're continuing to try to deal with our inventory of those. And we have addressed, I think, a great number of the open shafts and portals. There aren't that many that I'm aware of that are unaddressed in any way. But we've eliminated over 1,800 acres of dangerous piles and embankments. Those are mostly coal refuse piles, and we've restored water to over 2,500 people who had their water supplies impacted by past mining. And we've dedicated about $143 million of our AML grant toward abating and treating mine drainage to deal with those streams that are impaired. Here's a few examples of the coal refuse piles. We have over 500 of these still on the surface in Pennsylvania. And here's some AMD and AMD treatment systems, both passive and active. So what have we done? This kind of just shows it graphically. We've reclaimed about $670 million worth of sites and still have about $5 billion worth to reclaim them all. We have about 5,600 known problem areas with about 34,000 individual AML features remaining to be addressed. Another aspect of our work that we fund with our grants is AML emergencies, and those are hazards that occur suddenly and present an immediate threat to public health, safety, or general welfare. Often they are mine subsidence related, but can also be coal waste fires or underground mine fires or AMD issues that can cause landslides. So why do we need to continue this funding? Well, the AML grant funding is pretty much our primary or sole source of funding to address our remaining inventory of AML problems and also to address AML emergencies. We've addressed an average of 77 emergencies a year, costing us nearly $4 million a year since we took over the program from OSM in 2010. We've had a number of wet years, so in the last 5 years, our number of emergencies and our cost to abate them has gone up. It seems to be correlated directly with how wet of a year we have, but we're up to nearly $5 million a year over the last 5 years. This is just a table that kind of shows how much we've spent and how many emergencies we've done each calendar year. And in 2019, I think we're up to about 80 as we sit here now for around $2.5 million with 3 months to go in the year. So we will be probably above our average again this year. So how have we performed? Well, the grant money we've received from OSM, we've committed 76% of that to planning, engineering, and construction of AML projects. And we say here this correlates to both good paying jobs in addition to restored land and water. We've committed 21% of our grant to the AMD set-aside program for treating and abating acid mine drainage, and we've only spent 3% of our grant on administration. So pretty good track record, although we're a big program. And this is kind of that same thing, just in a pie chart. You can see that the 76% consisted of about 5%, the yellow slice, of water supply projects, and then 71% was hazards. The orange slices are AMD treatment, and then the small slice is admin. So some national perspectives before I turn this over to Autumn. Nationally, the AML programs have been around since the early 1980s, and they promote the reclamation of mined areas that were left with inadequate reclamation. Nationally, the AML programs are constantly reviewing the inventory of sites they have in their jurisdictional area. While there's a lot of AML sites that are addressed each year, we continue to find new sites that are added to the inventory. So the inventory is not static, it's ever changing. And as people move out sprawl out and move out into areas that were previously not inhabited, we seem to be finding more and more new features. And OSM maintains the national inventory of AML problems, and it's known as eAMLIS, which provides information on all these sites nationally. And if you go to OSM's website, osmre.gov, you can find links to their AMLIS inventory and review sites in any state or nationally if you want. So nationally, the state and tribal AML programs are making efficient nationwide progress with AML reclamation. I think they're doing a good job providing timely responses to new problems, in particular AML emergencies. And I also think they do a good job working with the public and landowners and other partners to try to meet everyone's needs in accomplishing reclamation. For more information nationally, the National Association of AML Programs website is listed there first, NAAMLP.net. And then all the programs from NAAMLP have been working together to make an educational website that provides a lot of details on individual projects, videos, frequently asked questions about the AML programs nationally, and it is ourworksnotdone.org. So some key reauthorization issues. We mentioned the fee is going to expire in September of 2021. The Interstate Mining Compact Commission and National Association of Abandoned Mineland Programs both strongly support reauthorization of the AML fee for an additional 15 years. And in my state, there's a contingent, the PA AML campaign, which is a large coalition of conservation districts, watershed groups, and other NGOs. They are also supporting reauthorization of the AML fee collection. So if you have any questions or want more information about my program, our website is right there. And then nationally, as I mentioned earlier, you can go to our worksnotdone.org. So with that being said, I am going to turn over the program to Autumn Coleman to pick it up from here.
Thanks, Eric. So am I gonna, oh, gotcha, show my screen. Let me know when you guys see it.
Looks good.
Okay. Do you see a slideshow or do you see the PowerPoint? Sorry. Yeah.
We still see the PowerPoint.
Okay. I'm not sure how I can get it back. Let's see. I can see it on one screen, but not the other. Give me 2 seconds. I apologize for that. Do you see the driver of the PowerPoint, or do you see the like basic PowerPoint screen?
Yeah, it's like the presenter view.
Okay. Do you guys have any tips on how to do that?
Maybe go down. There you go.
Okay.
Yep, I think that's there.
All right. Good morning. My name's Autumn Coleman, and I'm from Montana, and I'm here today to talk about Montana and some interesting things that we have found out on behalf of the National Association of Abandoned Mineland Programs. So very quickly, here's the coal regions of the United States. We're in the basically the Rocky Mountain area, west of the Rocky Mountains in the yellow and green portions. Okay, I'm just going to talk about money super quick before I get into the Montana stuff and the certified state stuff. So bear with me for a minute because I think it deserves a conversation. So the total fee collections since 1977 have been 9.7 billion. The interest earned on that has been about 1.6 billion, which leaves the total fund at 11.3. Of that, only 8.9% has been authorized or appropriated, and of that, 5.7 has gone into grants to states and tribes. Okay. So I skipped over. So how we get our money is that the fees collected from the coal mines goes into OSM RE, and then it's distributed to the states and tribes. And so coal mine money goes into OSM, and then 50% automatically goes into the state and tribal share. 30% goes into this historic coal fund, which is then distributed to uncertified states based on a factor of their estimated coal production at the time of the passage of SMACRA. And then there's another 20%, and funds out of that 20% will go into the minimum program makeup fund, which brings those smaller minimum program states up to $3 million. And I'm attaching this so that you guys can watch this video from Dylan Brown later. It's a really excellent way that shows how funds are distributed. And finally, the certified states and tribes. So our money comes from the US Treasury, and it's based on that 50% factor. So we get 50% of, what our coal production is, or the coal fees are, and 50% that would come back to those states, but it comes from the Treasury. Okay, so of the grants to states and tribes, and Eric talked about this for Pennsylvania, but I think it warrants conversation for the all of us. And so we did some math on this in conjunction with OSM, and 65% of our total grants have gone into construction, 17% engineering and design, 7% into administration, which if you have any experience with other federal programs is extremely low administration, 7% into A&B set aside, which Travis will talk about, and 4% into undelivered orders, which is essentially money that's been awarded to us but has not been committed yet to a specific project. So completed construction costs. So what have we done with that construction money? So $3.5 billion has gone into high priority or priority 1 and 2 problems. Those represent extreme dangers and imminent dangers to public safety and health. And $436 million has gone into priority 3 hazards to the environment. The difference between this slide here and the slide you saw previously is about $200 million. This slide here represents all of the completed construction costs. The previous slide only includes the whole completed construction costs. So I just wanted to explain there's a little discrepancy between those two. So construction by hazard. This is a very busy slide and I apologize for this, but the take-home message here is that 50% of all of our funds have gone into some of the most serious hazards. Those are dangerous high walls. As Eric said, there's accidents on those all the time. Subsidence, polluted water, human consumption, and dangerous piles and embankments. And that represents about 50% of what we've accomplished. And then a lot of the other problems on the other side make up the rest of that 50%. Okay, so what about Montana? Currently we have, that we know of, over 3,200 abandoned coal mines, 3,800 abandoned hard rock mines, over 2,700 miles of streams that are polluted by metals from abandoned mines. In the inventory, we have over 130 million in unfunded coal problems and untold billions in unaddressed abandoned hard rock hazards. The yellow dots are the abandoned hard rock mines and the black dots are abandoned coal mines. And just so for perspective for you guys, to drive from the North Dakota border to the Idaho border, if you went 80 miles an hour the whole time, it would take you almost 12 hours. So Montana is a really big state. We have a lot of ground to cover out there. And we have 7 Indian reservations as well. Okay, so the Montana AML program, we looked at our grant expenditures from 2008 to 2018, and we were running at a 7% administration costs. And that's just to oversee the program in general. The rest of that has gone into basically project costs. We call it construction, but it's planning, design, engineering, surveying, the actual dirt work on the ground, buying goods and services necessary for that. So what has Montana accomplished? We've extinguished 16 coal mine fires, closed 1,600 hazardous mine openings, reclaimed 31 miles of streams and 157 acres of polluted land, spent $17.5 million on reclaiming polluted waters. And my favorite figure is for every construction dollar spent, $1.59 is returned to the local economy. So what do we have left to do? Well, Montana still has quite a bit of polluted water from mines. We have 2 categories of polluted water: human consumption and agricultural and industrial. And so in a state that likely has more cows than people, that agricultural and industrial part is really important to us because a lot of the waters that are polluted, we need those for irrigation for crops and stock water for cows. We also have a variety of hazardous mine openings. We have subsidence, vertical openings, portals, and shafts. So the picture on the left with the traffic cone is a hard rock subsidence, or I guess opening, and the 2 on the right are coal, and those 2 on the right were taken within the last 2 years. We have a ton of clogged streamlands, or I mean, that's a fancy word for we have mine waste in floodplains. Those are as a result of either continued tailings impoundments or waste impoundments or failing tailings impoundments, and then mine spoils. And those water runs off of those, carrying the sediment and heavy metals down into the streams year after year. And we have the underground and surface mine fires. So we feel like we've caught up with all of those, but we have to keep an eye on those because two things. One, wildfires can spark new underground coal mine fires, and vice versa. So we may not know about an underground coal mine fire until it expresses itself on the surface and causes a wildfire. And in Montana, these wildfires are extremely dangerous. extremely time consuming and extremely resource intensive. So we need to keep on that. So without reauthorization, Montana's program will essentially end in 2023. The last fee collection in 2022, the last fee collection in 2021, payments in 2022, and then basically the doors closed in Montana in 2023. With that, I will leave you guys with my favorite quote from my friend Rob Rice in West Virginia. And so Montana looks forward to reauthorization of the AML fees so that we can continue to address these abandonment problems in the future.
Great, thanks. I'll just turn it over to Travis.
All right, are you seeing the presentation view of the slides?
We're on presenter view.
Okay. It's a problem with dual monitors.
Right. Autumn, maybe you can give them a tip how you fixed it for yourself.
Display settings and just click slideshow. Display settings, upper left hand
up at
corner.
the top.
Yeah. It says display settings. Yeah. No display settings.
Sorry, I couldn't. What'd you say?
Oh, yeah, display. Click on display settings. The little arrow by display settings. You're just up there at the top, upper left-hand corner. It says display settings above where it says DEP. Yeah, no, just above DEP where it says display settings. Next one to the right. Yep, that one, click that, and then swap presenter view. Yeah, there you go.
All right,
good.
thank you. Sorry about that.
It's all right.
All right. All right. So I'm Travis Parsons with the West Virginia AML program, and as you've heard, the current fee collection for AML will be September 30th, 2021. Our goal is to get this fee extended for another 15 years, and there's been a lot of achievements nationwide, as you've heard already, over the last 40 years of reclamation. There have been 824,000 acres of abandoned mine lands that have been reclaimed. However, there are many more AML sites out there that need abated, and it's well over $10 billion left in liabilities across the nation. But as we're seeing, there is hope for the future, and there is good positive outreach, and this new bill that we're going to be talking about today, the HR 4248, is the reauthorization bill that was introduced by Representative Cartwright of Pennsylvania. And he actually introduced this during our plenary session at our national conference a few weeks ago. The bill currently has 12 sponsors. And as I said, the goal, the way the bill is written, will extend the AML fee for another 15 years, so taking us from 2021 to 2036. And some of the provisions of this bill will also allow minimum program states to contribute up to 30% of their entire grant into an AMD set-aside account. Currently, they're limited to just their state and federal shares, which in the case of Maryland, that would be like $170,000, which isn't much when you're talking about AMD's treatment. But this would allow them to spend, up to $1 million for AMD set-aside. Emergency projects will also be funded or reimbursed by OSM instead of coming out of the annual grants. In West Virginia, we budget $4 million annually for emergencies, but over the last few years, 2 underground mine fires and several large landslides have caused us to exceed our $4 million budget, and we've had to transfer money from our normal reclamation projects over to our emergency program. And the bill will also help by increasing funding to minimum programs from $3 million to $5 million. And then it'll also reimburse the states and tribes for all the sequestered funds from 2013 to 2019. That current balance of sequestered funds is 124 million, almost 125 million dollars, and it'll also provide an exemption for future sequestration. And it's important to note also that other than these few things, no other changes or provisions from the 2006 amendments will be affected. So just to kind of touch base on what states and tribes are doing to help out with the reauthorization effort, there's quite a bit of outreach and education, everything from the local level of officials to state legislators and all the way on up to Capitol Hill, working with watershed groups and coalitions, sending out Dear Colleague letters. NAMLIP also has a safeguarding booklet that we can pass out that's got very good stories and pictures of and tribe programs have also created a series of 1- and 2-page information papers. It's got nice little infographics and some just bulleted data on it. We're working with the e-ambulance database that was mentioned earlier, trying to clean up some of the completion data, missing inventory, and cost estimates. And we're working with OSM on the transparency and dissemination of information on their websites to make it a little easier and more forthcoming. And then, as mentioned, pie charts and different visual aids to help people understand the program and see the benefits. So here's a picture of the West Virginia inventory, noted by the little green dots everywhere. As you can see, it's pretty widespread. And here's just a snip graphic of what we've done in the past since 1981. We've spent almost $800 million in construction, $85 million in our AMD set aside, and very low administrative and maintenance percentage there. Over on the far right, down in the bottom, is the known inventory. So although we've, even with all the money that we've spent, we've cleaned up over 2,000 sites, but we have over 3,000 sites left that need abated. And as mentioned earlier, each of these sites contain, multiple features. So, many different problems at each one of those sites. So, in addition to the remaining high priority health and safety hazards, we do spend a great deal of time trying to restore the water quality in our state streams. And thanks to our AMD set-aside program and the ability to set that money into that account, we've been able to restore over 100 miles of once dead streams. Many had been void of life for decades, some up to 80 years prior to doing the reclamation on them. So the AMD set-aside, it allows states and tribes to set up to 30% of their annual grant into a state account. That money then becomes state money, but can only be used for the treatment of acid mine drainage. We went a long time without putting money into a set-aside because the money that was there wasn't earning much interest or anything. But in 2017, we had a legislative rule change that allowed us to move that into an interest-bearing account. And so it's now in money markets and bonds, and we use the interest earned off of that account to maintain and operate the current in-stream dosers and active treatment sites that we have. And once the interest is more than what the O&M is required, then we'll start designing and implementing additional treatment systems. Currently, our fund's about almost $46,000 a month to operate the systems, and we have 9 in-stream dosers and 34 limestone sand dump sites. And then we have 3 systems that should be coming online in the next year or 2. They're currently in design. We got some land purchases, and one site's requiring a bridge to be built to get into it. So, but those will be coming on shortly. And here's a graph of our set-aside account over the last few years. The green line is the balance, and then the orange is the monthly interest earned. You can see over the last year there's been a lot of ups and downs with the market, and we've also drawn some money out, so that's why there's a little dip in the balance as well. Here's a picture or a map of where our current in-stream dosers and sand dump sites are located. They're mostly in the northern part of the state. The first 4 here is the one I'll be going into a little more detail on. This is the Three Fork Creek dosers. There's 4 different dosers in the tributaries of Three Fork Creek, and then over on the right side, on the easternmost portion, there's the Krellin doser. That's one that we have a shared doser with the state of Maryland that goes in and treats Laurel Run. And then our next systems are the Abrams Creek dosers, and these are Abram Creek is a tributary to the north branch of the Potomac, and then down below that, toward the middle, is the Blackwater doser. That's a fully automated doser that we have computer access to. We can log in and adjust the flows. And then the southern portion here, the 34 sand dump sites that I mentioned, this is on Middle Fork and a series of different tributaries of that river. And this is also the location where one of our new fully automated dosers will be going in next year. So I'll go into a little bit more detail about the Three Fork Creek, which is a shining example of the potential success of AMD set-aside and the value of going in and doing remediation of streams. So the Three Fork Creek watershed drains 103 square miles. The main stem is 20 miles long, and the majority of the AMD coming into the stream resides in Squires Creek, North and South Fork of Birds Creek, and Raccoon Creek. And it's estimated about 9,000 acres of mine pools drain into the main stem of Three Fork Creek. So in this map, it shows the 4 green triangles there is the location of the dosers. As I said, we put them as far up in the tributary as we could to capture and still be downstream of most of the discharges. And this also allows ample time for the pH to raise and metals to start dropping out before it gets to the main stem of the creek. And of course, you see all the different underground mining that's taking place. So prior to implementing the dosers, 106 water samples were taken in 26 locations, and these are the numbers that we found in the stream. The medium pH was 2.9. The total aluminum was 15 milligrams per liter, and iron was 21.5. So here's examples of the dosers that we have. 3 of them are the Aquafix auger systems, and then we have 1 tipping bucket. And pretty simple system. We have a water intake that brings the stream water through. The lime is dispensed into a trough in the bottom, and then it goes back through a channel and re-enters the stream. So the medium pH, like I said before dosing, was rather low. After dosing, we were able to keep it right around 7. And the tributaries pH at or very near 6. Here's a picture of Birds Creek near the mouth, and before and after treatment. It's pretty evident of the success just looking at the elimination of the the iron in the stream embeddedness. So we worked with our watershed assessment branch prior to doing the prior to implementing the 4 different dosers. The pre-treatment there's 4 different sample sites, total about 1,000 yards. 1 green sunfish was caught out of all of those sites. And then post-treatment, which was about 16 months later, we caught over 1,600 fish and representing 21 different species. And those were all just voluntarily re-entering the stream and moving up into those once dead streams. And here's a picture of some of the survey work going on. We got folks with the electroshockers, and then our staff following behind them with catch nets. And then we've also been able to get this mobile aquarium that we can take around to communities to show them what's now living in their streams that were once dead. And then Abram Creek, I mentioned earlier that tributary of the North Branch of the Potomac was once completely dead, and we're now seeing native brook trout moving back into the area, and some pretty small ones too. So it's showing that reproduction is occurring within those streams now. And here's the other active treatment sites that we have. Blackwater River, Abram Creek, the Crellin, and Middle Fork. So, and you can see the mouths that have been recovered on each one of those watersheds. It's imperative that this work continues. And despite what we've heard today, without reauthorization, the AMD set aside will not be effective, or in many cases will just go away. No additional money will be deposited into the set aside account without reauthorization, and states don't have the budgets to inherit such cost burdensome responsibilities, and failure to maintain these systems will result in catastrophic loss of aquatic habitat, and in many cases overnight. The moment the last drop of lime or chemicals put into the water, the streams will revert back to their pre-reclamation status. So House Bill 4248 will help enable additional states and tribes to begin utilizing set-aside accounts. We'll just increase the amount of treatment and rehabilitation of streams nationwide. And here's just the information screen, contact information if you need any additional information or have questions.
Great, thanks, Travis.
You're welcome.
All right, this is Erin, and I'm just getting my PowerPoint up. All right, can you all see that all right?
Yes.
We see it's not in presentation view for me yet.
There, now it is.
Not
Is it in
yet.
presentation view now? No?
No.
Huh. Interesting. I'm having the same problem everyone's having. Sorry about that. Shoot. Huh. All right. Well, in the interest of time.
Okay.
Okay, you can see it. All right. So
Yeah.
in the interest of time, because I want to make sure that we can turn this over to Greg as well, and Eric, Autumn, and Travis have covered so much good information. I'm Erin Savage, and I have a slightly different perspective in that I work for a regional nonprofit, but we have pretty much the same perspective on AML issues in our region and AML reauthorization in general. So all of the problems that folks have talked about so far, we definitely have in the Central Appalachian states as well. We just heard from West Virginia, and we see a lot of the same issues in Virginia, Kentucky, and Tennessee. Acid mine drainage, subsidence, dangerous high walls, mine portals. They pose a health and safety risk to the people living nearby. They also aren't particularly conducive to economic revitalization in our region. I really appreciated Autumn's statistic on the $1 spent and the, I think it was about $1.50 in economic return. I'd love to see statistics like that from other states as well. So it really goes to show that AML reclamation can contribute to economic revitalization, especially when it's based on local knowledge and information of what local communities want in their region. See, I'm trying to advance this. It's not working. There we go. No. All right. I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm having so much trouble with this. There we go. All right, so the other piece of information I wanted to point out is outstanding AML costs in the region I work in. In Tennessee, we've got about 47 million worth of AML outstanding, unfunded, 426 million in Virginia, 468 million in Kentucky, and 1.6 billion in West Virginia, and that is unfunded. So for those reasons, AML reauthorization is really, really important to us. Our team at App Voices is really going to be focusing on it in the coming year. We are very much in support of HR 4248. And we've already heard a little bit about what's in the bill. I wanted to reiterate that this would reauthorize fee collection for 15 years. And also increase the mandatory minimum. That increase of the mandatory minimum from 3 million to 5 million will help Tennessee out immediately, just because Tennessee is producing less coal and therefore paying less into the fund doesn't mean that it doesn't still have a lot of outstanding AML. The mandatory minimum increase will likely help Virginia very shortly as well. And then the last thing I wanted to point out is right now we're looking at reauthorization with no fee change. All in all, that's all right with us. Getting it reauthorized is the most important thing. But we did run some numbers based on the Energy Information Administration coal projections for the coming years and the existing fees and the outstanding total balance across the nation, which is at about 10.6 billion, which is represented by the red line across this graph. So you can see here the green mark is the unspent balance that we currently have, and we basically calculated that the current fee would have to roughly double in order for us to reach that outstanding $10.6 billion balance by the year 2050. And
hi, Erin.
Yeah.
Sorry, we couldn't see that graph.
Oh, okay. Let me. But
we can also just make it available for folks afterwards if they'd like to.
I will make it available
to see it.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Right. That's okay.
I'm going to go ahead and wrap that up and turn it over to Greg then. Hold on one second, Greg.
I'm ready when you are.
Right, I've got to make. All right. And actually, it's that I have to make Autumn the presenter now. Hold on real quick.
I'd say I can start while you're bringing her
Yeah.
up. She's just got one slide. I'm not proficient on PowerPoint, nor obviously am I proficient on GoToMeeting because I can't get into that site either. But that's okay. Luckily, we have this telephone connection, and most of what I have to say is all going to be in terms of an overview that doesn't require slides. So again, I'm Greg Conrad, former Executive Director of Interstate Mining Compact. I'm now consulting with the organization as well as with the AML Association. And we are indeed encouraged by the introduction of 4248 by Representatives Cartwright and Thompson. And we're up to 11 co-sponsors now, and we're hoping for more. And while it may seem, premature to be diligently pushing for the introduction and passage of a bill that doesn't that addresses fee collection that won't expire until September of 2021, we're well aware of the political dynamics that attend a measure like this. The last time we faced reauthorization in the mid-2000s, it took several years before a bill was agreed upon by all of the divergent interests and groups, and then finally passed in 2006. So while this bill is not nearly as complex as the 2006 amendments, it is similarly controversial in that the mining industry is currently opposed to it. So it's likely that there will be some tough and serious horse trading that will have to take place as this measure winds its way through Congress. We're also mindful of the fact that 2020 will see a major national election, which could swing both the leadership of the country as well as the Congress, especially the Senate. And should either of those things occur, 2021 will see a fair amount of reorganization in both the executive and legislative branches, with the consequent distractions that attend such transitions. We saw that happen at the beginning of this Congress. It took many months before the House was ready to take on some of the legislative initiatives that they're now pursuing. So that could easily complicate attempts to pass a bill in such a dynamic environment in 2021. Thus, our efforts to move a bill in the current Congress, if not in this session, then certainly in the early months of the second session of the 116th next year. And we say this because by May of next year, much of the attention in DC will swing toward the national election, and many legislative initiatives will likely take a back seat. Today, we have seen a great deal of bipartisan interest in 4248, much as we've seen with the related bill, the Reclaim Act. We have also seen a high degree of partnering among interest groups in support of 4248, particularly watershed groups and NGOs in Appalachia, similar to what Aaron just said. And while there are some issues where the parties could be at odds, so far, we've all been on the same page concerning the key provisions in the bill, which frankly is one of the reasons we've been successful in seeing its introduction sooner than we had anticipated. And we're really hopeful that we can keep these alliances intact as the bill moves forward in the House. In the Senate, things are further behind schedule, but the Senate often awaits action by the House on a measure before they move forward. But we do have a bill that's been introduced by Senator Manchin, S 1193, which is a very basic 15-year extension of fee collection authority. And we're thankful indeed for the senator's leadership on this important measure, and we're seeking to build a coalition of support from other key senators with the hope of seeing a hearing on AML legislation scheduled in the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee before the end of the year. Given the congressional schedule for the rest of the year, and the various other bills of importance before both bodies, including things like funding measures for the federal government, gun legislation, border restrictions, and trade measures, we may run out of time in the first session to deliver a bill to the president for a signature. But hope springs eternal, and our efforts will continue unabated as we move throughout this fall. One legislative dynamic I want to address is how 4248 could potentially align with other somewhat related pieces of legislation. You might recall that in 2006, AML reauthorization did not lead the way for the bill that was eventually passed. Instead, it was relief for the United Mine Workers' health and pension plans, known as the Combined Benefit Fund. Interestingly, there are currently 4 bills, 2 in the House and 2 in the Senate, addressing these same UMW concerns. And there are some of the same sponsors and co-sponsors supporting those bills that are also lined up for AML reauthorization. There's also the Reclaim bill that I mentioned earlier, which was introduced by Representative Cartwright, the same sponsor of 4248 on reauthorization. And that bill has 63 co-sponsors. It has already passed the House Natural Resources Committee, but is not to move forward due to the need for an offset for the money that would have to be released from the unappropriated balance to address reclaim type projects. A similar bill to reclaim is from the House is pending in the Senate, also introduced by Senator Manchin, but to date there's been no action on that bill. There are also bills to address another mining issue, the Black Lung Excise Tax. And finally, there is the Community Reclamation Partnerships Act, which is H.R. 315, that has been passed out of the House Natural Resources Committee and which addresses Good Samaritan protections for those who undertake AML work related to water quality improvements. So while there's been no action so far taken to combine any of these bills into a single legislative package, we are keenly aware of what has transpired in the past and which could serve as prologue for action in this Congress, especially as time grows short. So we're all going to have to maintain a keen eye on how some of these bills could potentially be combined into one singular effort. In terms of where the states are on AML reauthorization, our current efforts are focused on seeking additional co-sponsors for 4248 and urging either a legislative hearing on the measure or perhaps going straight to a markup in the near future, since a hearing on abandoned mine land issues was already held in March, at which IMCC and the AML Association testified regarding the need for reauthorization. We're also, as has been mentioned, working diligently with the Office of Surface Mining to produce solid, reliable data and information about the AML program that Congress and others can consider as part of the debate on reauthorization. And that includes information on not only our accomplishments, but how AML funds have been spent by the states and tribes, and cost projections for the AML work that remains to be done in the future. And in this regard, I would point you once again to that excellent website that Eric identified that was developed by the association that can be found at ourworksnotdone.org, ourworksnotdone.org. And then, of course, we also continue our work with various partners and constituents with each member state to get the word out about the need for reauthorization, including contacts with our governor's offices, state legislatures, county commissions, AML contractors, and the like. So with that quick overview about where we stand from a legislative perspective, I'll hand this back to Rebecca for any Q&A if time allows.
Yeah, thanks so much, everyone, for those really helpful presentations. Let's see, show screen here. I know that we have run over time, but for those of you, both attendees and panelists, that can stick around for a little bit longer, we'll do some Q&A. You can type questions into the message box and we'll receive those here and field them as we can. But also, if you need to sign off and need to go, if you have any follow-up questions about the information presented in this webinar, or if you have interest in getting involved with AML reauthorization efforts, you can contact one of the presenters, or you can send an email to me at rshelton@aclc.org, and I will help field those questions and get the information that's needed to you and your organization and your work. And also, this webinar hopefully will be available soon as a recording for future reference. We'll keep, hopefully we can keep that posted eventually on our soon-to-be Reclaiming Appalachia Coalition website. as well as it could possibly be available for dissemination in other locations as well. So with that, if we have any questions coming in.
Yeah, this is Erin. Sorry, I was just going to say, I can read, we've got a few questions that have been typed in, but sorry, did someone else need to say something?
I just had a comment about, this is Travis Parsons, and to Aaron, you're talking about West Virginia's remaining inventory.
Mm-hmm.
You know, AMLIS does have it at like $1.6 billion. However, that there's some things that are missing out of there. Back in the 90s, there was $2 billion worth of dangerous high walls, P1 and P2, that were removed by OSM.
Mm-hmm.
And we've gotten permission to add those back in. So there's a process of revetting those sites and putting them back in. So we're making some progress, but there's still about 600 and some sites that need to be vetted and added back in. And so with that, and then we've got about $1 billion worth of underground mine fires that were never allowed to be put in the inventory. So we address those as they become almost emergency status. So I just wanted to clarify that a little bit. You know, although AMLIS does say 1.6, I mean, there's still a lot more out there than what's in the national inventory.
Yeah, and in the interest of time, I hadn't gone into a lot of detail there, but Appalachian Voices does have kind of a fee one-pager that goes over some of that. Basically, that's an issue with the inventory, likely across most states across the country. I think, as someone else said earlier, that inventory is a constantly moving target. Things get added, new sites are discovered. So that outstanding 10.6 billion for the whole country is likely a floor. But on that note, I'd like to get to a couple of questions that some folks have typed in. So, and I'll just let people pick them up. If you've got an answer, go ahead and volunteer it. So first question is, what impact will proposed reclaim legislation have on reauthorization passage and vice versa?
Oh, this is Greg. I can address that a little bit. There's been talk all along about whether reclaim might be the vehicle for moving forward with not only the goals and objectives of that particular piece of legislation, but whether reauthorization might be attached to that to form a singular bill on the future of AML work undertaken by the states and tribes. And from our perspectives as states, we see that, you know, should the momentum really build for the passage of reclaim, that could serve as the best vehicle for quickly addressing AML reauthorization as well, especially given the fairly narrow approach and provisions that are contained in 4248. I don't think there's any conflict jurisdictionally, so that could potentially be a vehicle for moving it forward and accomplishing the tasks in both measures.
Yeah, I'll just add from our perspective, we would love to see the two move forward together if possible, but certainly reauthorization is a huge priority. All right, so the next question is, has there been any projection on anticipated coal extraction levels over 15 years starting in 2021 and the impact on severance tax and distributions to states and tribes? I'm happy to take that, but if someone else would like to, that's okay too.
Go ahead, Erin.
Okay, great. So yeah, and I keep referencing this one pager. We can make sure to send around a link to that. Basically, there has been, we typically use the Energy Information Administration projections for coal production. They tend to be on average a bit optimistic, especially in recent years. And so, but that is what we use to determine what revenues would be from 2021 to 2050, and that is what we use to determine what amount we would hit by 2050. So yes, we're looking into that, but the big picture, I think, as most of us know, coal production is declining, and with that, revenue from the AML fee is also declining.
I also believe that the Foundation for Pennsylvania Watersheds has done some work on this and some analysis. And John Dawes with that organization might be able to make some of that available to folks if they were interested.
Great. All right. And then another question is, what is the National Mining Association's position on reauthorization?
Hello, this is Greg again. As articulated in the letter that they provided to the leadership and members of the House Natural Resources Committee back in April in advance of a hearing on, in advance of a markup on May 9th, I believe it was, they took a pretty strong stand against Reclaim, which was the bill that was being marked up that day. And in the process of commenting strongly against Reclaim, they also made their pitch for why they believe that monies in the AML fund have not been efficiently and effectively spent by the states and OSM. They were using some numbers that were very limited in scope and function and usability from one singular document. And we have done our best, as has OSM since that time, to try to clarify the record and provide a better indication and a more comprehensive perspective on exactly how the AML fund and the fees have been utilized over the years. But it appears from all we know at this point that their concerns about how they consider their money to have been spent that's been paid into the fund as being problematic, and as a result, and given the financial condition of the coal industry and declining production, they don't believe that the AML fee is something that they can continue to pay. So they've been opposed so far.
Can I add on to Greg's comments? This is Autumn. So the NMA has their opposition fact sheets up on their website, and one of the things that they say is they're urging reform for the program, which they refer to as broken. And basically what they want to see is that the money and fees that are collected are going into abandoned mineland work. And so it's basically forced us to do this research and demonstrate our transparency with how we spend our funds. And to answer that, the other thing I think is really interesting is when we met with our coal association in Montana, they are supportive of reauthorization. Their caveat is that the fee stays where it is now. And I know that other states have had similar conversations with their mining groups, their coal associations. And so my concern about their statement is that it doesn't necessarily reflect mining associations across the country. And so, as I was presenting those financial numbers earlier, we've done a deep dive into where the money has gone and how it has been spent by the states and tribes. And I think as a, former state, I think we have a lot to be proud of there. So I think one of the things we can do to respond to them is show our work.
Great, thanks guys. That is all the questions that I see at this time. If anyone else has any other questions, they can go ahead and type them in. But I know we are over time as well.
Yes, and thank you all so much. I think also if you think of any questions later, again, feel free to reach out to me at Appalachian Citizens Law Center, and we'll try to point you in the right direction of information and insight. So I think with that being said, we'll wrap up. Again, thanks to everyone who took time to attend this morning, and also for our panelists, really appreciative of the work that you're doing and of the time that you put into preparing for this webinar and sharing your knowledge and your insight. So Thanks again, all.
Thank
you
you.
for having me.
Thanks.
Thank you very much for setting this up.